The fire is already lit. Sit down, breathe, and listen. Carl Jung once wrote, "To accept oneself completely is the most frightening thing there is." And maybe he was right. Because the hardest part isn't waking up, it's what comes after. When the noise fades, when the old pain quiets down, and you realize you're standing, but you no longer know who you are. You can't go back to who you were, but you don't yet know how to live in this new way. And then, silence. A silence no one explains. It's not peace, it's space. Space between what collapsed and what hasn't yet been born. In this video, you'll understand why that space feels so terrifying, and why so many people feel emptier after the awakening than before. You did everything right, tried to evolve, to change, to understand yourself, and still, something doesn't quite fit. This video is for that moment, for that blind spot in the journey, for when no one's clapping anymore, and all that's left is to keep going. You did everything right, but still, you feel lost. You woke up early, drank lemon water, meditated, journaled. You read about boundaries, self-love, healing. You did everything right, but still, when the day quiets down and silence arrives, something inside still feels off. It's no longer a loud pain, no longer that screaming inner chaos. It's something else, as if someone turned down the volume of life, but forgot to mention that silence also hurts. This phase has no pretty name. No one teaches you what to do with it. You feel like you've left the old, but haven't arrived at the new. You're in the middle, where nothing is stable and everything feels strange. In anthropology, it has a name: liminality, the space between the symbolic death of one identity and the birth of another. It's like a dark hallway between two rooms. You know you don't want to go back, but you're not sure if you're ready to enter. And this is where many people get lost. Because this space between life versions has no color, no map, no manual, only a void, and you inside it. That's when exhaustion hits hardest. Because you look back and think, but I did everything. I dedicated myself. I healed. I changed. I understood myself. And still, why do I feel lost? The answer is simple, and also difficult. You're in the middle, and the middle always feels like a mistake. But it's not. What you're living isn't the end. It's the space before the beginning. But no one talks about that. People speak of awakening as if it's a happy ending, as if once you understand it all, life falls into place. But no one tells you that understanding it all is followed by a strange silence. A silence with no party, no applause, no instruction manual. Carl Jung said collapse is necessary for the true self to begin to form. But he didn't mention that collapse comes with clarity, not relief. Because now you see everything more clearly, but that doesn't mean you know what to do with what you see. The old world has expelled you, but the new world hasn't opened its door yet. So you try to fill the gap. More practices, more books, more learning. But nothing fits. Because this is not a time to seek, it's a time to wait. To wait inside the dark, without rushing out. I know, easier said than done, because being in the middle
is exhausting. It's exhausting to explain you're tired, even after all your growth. It's exhausting to fake composure when all you feel is, I don't know who I am anymore. But maybe, just maybe, not knowing who you are is the first sign that something true is being born. Maybe this fatigue is your body asking for pause. Maybe this silence is your soul asking for space. Maybe this emptiness is what always came before creation. Victor Turner studied rites of passage in tribal cultures. He discovered that every real transformation includes a phase of suspension, where the old identity no longer works and the new one hasn't yet appeared. They called it symbolic death, a kind of death that prepares the birth of something deeper. And that's where you are, in the middle, in the dark, in the place where the ego stops and the soul begins to whisper. It's uncomfortable, it's lonely, and precisely for that reason, it's sacred. When you're tired of trying to be your best self, have you noticed you're tired? Not of the world, not of other people, but of yourself. Tired of constantly observing yourself, of trying to react the right way, of breathing deeply when all you really want is to scream, of responding with compassion when all you want is silence. At first, it felt like evolution. Now, it feels like a new kind of prison. Before, you blamed yourself for being impulsive. Now, you blame yourself for not being conscious enough. They changed the name, but the guilt remained. You read, you journal, you reflect, and still, some days, everything feels tangled. Anger, insecurity, jealousy, nameless sadness. And then on top of all that, you blame yourself for still feeling it. I should have moved past this by now. I should be at another level. With everything I've been through, how can I still be like this? That's the trap. The same old need to be perfect, now dressed in spirituality. You let go of social standards, but replace them with a new ideal, constant awareness. And it's exhausting, truly exhausting. Louis Sauce, a leading scholar of modern psychology, calls this hyperreflexivity. It's when you overanalyze yourself so much, you disconnect from life. You monitor every emotion, every reaction, every thought, afraid that you might be slipping again. What was meant to set you free ends up paralyzing you because the focus shifts. It used to be, what am I feeling? Now it's, should I be feeling this? And so your feelings become suspicious. Your pain becomes proof of failure. Your silence becomes a sign that you've disconnected. It's a new cage, prettier, more sophisticated, but still a cage. And the key to getting out is not understanding more.
It's stopping the constant effort, stopping the urge to arrive, stopping the need to make healing a goal. Because what you feel is not a failure. It's proof that you're alive. You don't need to become the best version of yourself. You need to stop fighting the one that already exists. Self-help has become a market, and the market will always tell you that something is missing. It'll convince you that if you just buy one more course, take one more retreat, integrate one more trauma, then you'll finally be ready. But ready for what? Ready to stop feeling? Ready to never make mistakes again? Ready to become an idea of yourself? Your soul doesn't want that. It wants space. It wants truth. It wants to breathe without always having to prove itself. And more than that, you are not a project. You are a person. And people don't level up. They feel. They stumble. They repeat. They learn slowly. Sometimes you'll get dysregulated. You'll forget everything you've learned. You'll say things you regret. That doesn't make you less awakened. It just makes you, well, human. This is the blind spot of the journey. When the path itself becomes a form of pressure. When even spirituality turns into a goal-setting plan. When the pursuit of lightness gets heavy. But maybe, just maybe, this is where something real begins. Maybe right now, when you've finally grown tired of trying, you finally started to truly live. Maybe what you call regression is just your body saying, stop trying to be more. Let me just be for a while. So rest. Rest from the idea that you need to be an example. Rest from the image of the healer. Rest from the mature, centered version you built to survive. And listen to what remains when you stop trying. The silence that stays. That silence is yours. You've changed, and now you don't fit anywhere. There's a moment in the journey that no one prepares you for. It's not the collapse, not the old pain. It's what comes after. When you start to understand yourself, to see clearly what hurt you, to step away from what used to numb you. And that same movement also begins to separate you from people. You go out to meet friends and return feeling empty. Someone in your family makes an old joke, and what used to be just annoying now feels like a punch. The conversations feel shallow. The places feel repetitive. And you start to feel like a stranger in everything you once called home. It's subtle. No fights, no drama. But still, there's pain. The pain of no longer fitting in places where there's still affection. You know something has changed, but no one around you seems to notice it. They expect you to laugh at the same things, to talk like you always talked, to react in the same old ways. But you just can't anymore. And the worst part? You feel guilty about it. Am I being arrogant? Am I full of myself now? Am I becoming difficult? But it's not arrogance. It's change.
And change scares people. Not just you, but everyone around you. Carl Jung once said that the process of individuation, becoming who you truly are, requires, first, a separation. You have to step away from the group, even if you love the group, even if the group doesn't understand. And yes, that hurts. Because behind every visible distance, there's an invisible grief. You miss conversations that no longer make sense, connections that only existed when you betrayed yourself a little, versions of you that were still welcome. But now, you talk less, you tolerate less, you go quiet when every part of you wants to disappear from that room. And then, the doubt creeps in. Am I overreacting? Am I isolating myself? Maybe. Or maybe you just stopped lying to fit in. Here's the truth. Some bonds only existed because you were holding both ends of the rope.
Now that you've let go, the other side doesn't know what to do. This is common. This is part of it. People who love you may be scared by your changes. They might feel like they're losing you. But in reality, they're just meeting a version of you that always existed and finally stopped hiding. You're not pulling away. You just stopped shrinking. But not everyone will understand that. And that's okay. You don't have to convince anyone of who you've become. You just have to stand where you are now. Even if it feels lonelier, even if it's quieter, even if you're not sure yet where you'll find new connection. Because yes, for a while, you'll feel in between worlds, distant from the old and not quite rooted in the new. But that too is part of the path. Because if it doesn't hurt, it means you're still trying to fit, and fitting was never the same as belonging. Real belonging takes courage. Courage to be whole, even if that pushes people away. Courage to hold your ground when someone expected the old you. Courage to not go back just because it hurts. You're not cold. You're not superior. You're just more true. And the truth can seem rude to those who were used to the version of you that bent to please. So breathe. Let the emptiness arrive. Let the silence settle in. Because it's making space for new encounters, new connections. People who will see you, really see you, without needing you to rehearse first. And until then, may you have the courage to keep going, even if no one understands. The problem isn't feeling bad. It's believing that feeling bad means you failed. Have you been feeling off and blaming yourself for it? Some days you feel angry. Other days, a sadness with no name. And sometimes just a numb, lingering emptiness. But when that happens, you don't just feel it. You judge yourself for it. I should be better by now. With everything I've learned, how can I still feel this way? Am I going backwards? But the truth is something else entirely. You're not regressing, you're living. And living, truly living, includes heavy days. It includes falling. It includes doubt. It includes too many emotions in a body that just wanted some rest. Carl Jung once wrote, "The goal is not perfection, it is wholeness. And to be whole is to accept that you carry both light and shadow, anger, fear, jealousy, exhaustion, the urge to give up. It's all part of you. But instead of welcoming it, you reject it. Instead of listening, you try to fix it. Because you were taught that feeling bad means you're not evolving. That peace is the only proof that you're on the right path. That's a lie. That's the new moralism. Not one that demands goodness, but one that demands you feel good all the time. And when you don't, you feel like a fraud. Like you've betrayed your own path. But what if it's not that? What if the discomfort is just your body asking for attention? What if the sadness is just your soul saying, there's something inside you that you're still not listening to? Carl Rogers said, "The curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change." In other words, real transformation only happens after acceptance, never before. If you feel sad, listen. If you feel angry, listen. If you feel like you hit bottom, listen too. Because all of it is language. All of it is alive. Sadness shows you where you're still bleeding. Anger shows you where you were crossed. Exhaustion shows you that you've gone too far past your own limits. None of this is failure. It's compass.
But we were taught to call it all error. Taught to hide the shadow so we could appear healed. Taught to smile so we wouldn't seem weak. But the soul doesn't want appearance. It wants listening. And every time you deny an emotion, it comes back louder. Disguised, confused, but always with the same message. There's a part of you still waiting to be felt. That's your work now. Not to run from the pain, not to rush to heal it, but to ask, what are you trying to show me? Because you are not broken. You are in process. You are not behind. You are going through something real. You are not failing. You are in contact. But to stay in contact, you will have to let go of looking okay. You will have to learn to look at yourself with more truth than judgment. Pain is not a sign of regression. It is the beginning of a conversation you've avoided for years. And maybe, just maybe, now is the first time you're truly ready to listen. So next time you feel bad, don't correct yourself. Just listen. Be whole. Even if it means being messy on the inside. Because maybe, just maybe, in that mess lies the key to real change. People will try to pull you back. You've started to change. Not in loud ways, not overnight, but deep inside, something shifted. You talk less, tolerate less, swallow less. And the people around you, they start to notice. You've been acting weird. You've been so distant lately. You seem cold. You used to be easier to talk to. Small phrases, but they carry weight.
Because it's not just about what you say. It's about what you stopped allowing. You stopped laughing just to be polite. Stopped staying silent out of fear. Stopped explaining yourself every time you said no. And suddenly, people don't recognize you anymore. They miss the old you, even if they don't say it out loud. That's when the doubt starts to creep in. Am I taking this too far? Am I the difficult one now? Am I losing my heart along the way? You think about going back, about softening again, smiling more, pretending less, just so you don't upset anyone, just so you don't disappoint the ones you love. And that's where the deepest cut comes. You start to consider abandoning who you've become just to keep who you love close. This is the test. Carl Jung said that individuation, the act of becoming who you truly are, doesn't happen without conflict with your surroundings, because your change exposes the stagnation of those who don't want to change. Your clarity unsettles those who prefer to stay asleep. Your firmness reveals how used they were to your quiet submission. And when that happens, emotional systems, family, friendships, relationships trigger a silent mechanism, emotional homeostasis. It's when the group, sensing that you've left your usual place, tries to pull you back, not out of cruelty, but out of fear. Go back to who you used to be. It was easier to love you that way. And maybe it was, because the old version molded itself, lowered its voice, shrank to fit. The new one speaks honestly, steps back when needed, says no, even while trembling inside. And that breaks unspoken contracts. Some bonds you had were built on your absence, on your inability to draw lines, on your need to please. Now that you're showing up, those bonds shake, and guilt tries to creep in. Am I being selfish? Have I lost my heart? But selfishness is when you hurt others to protect yourself. What you're doing is protecting yourself so you don't lose yourself again. That's not selfishness. That's emotional dignity. Will you lose people? Maybe. Will you disappoint those who expected an older version of you? Almost certainly. But you'll stay whole. And in time, you'll attract people who love you. Truly. People who don't need explanations. People who feel safe when you're honest, not when you lie well. The hardest part isn't changing. It's holding your change when the world tries to bargain for your return. But this is the turning point. Will you betray yourself just to keep old affection alive? Or will you stand firm, even if it means being alone for a while? You may think you're choosing between you and them, but really, you're choosing between an old cycle and a new possibility. Because holding on to who you've become might be exactly what one day sets someone else free. And someone someday will look at your steadiness and think, it's possible. I can do it too. Not every day will feel purposeful. Some days we'll have bills. Some days we'll have boredom. There are mornings when you wake up and everything feels the same. You get up, brush your teeth, make coffee, check your phone, go through your tasks, pay a bill. Take a deep breath and feel a quiet emptiness you can't quite name. It's not sadness. It's not pain. It's just silence. And deep down, you think, it was supposed to feel different. Because after everything you've lived, everything you've learned, everything you've changed, you expected life to feel more magical, more meaningful, more exciting. But what showed up was this: an ordinary day, full of ordinary things, with ordinary feelings. And then comes the panic. Did I lose my path? Where's that feeling of being aligned with my purpose? Why don't I feel that fire anymore? Maybe it's because you're not in crisis, not in ecstasy, not in a breakthrough. Maybe you're just living. And living is often repetitive. It's simple. It's boring. But no one talks about that. No one prepares you for the day after awakening, the one where you look in the mirror, make coffee, and nothing extraordinary happens. And that's okay. Because not every moment comes with deep meaning. Not every moment brings an epiphany. Not every moment gives you chills of, I'm on the right path. Sometimes there will be bills, lines, rude drivers, laundry to fold, dishes to wash, and all of it is part of the path too. Viktor Frankl once wrote that humans need meaning, but he also said, meaning can be found in how you do small things. It's not only about grand missions, it's in how you wash a plate, how you speak to a stranger, how present you are during a small task. True spirituality doesn't take you away from life. It brings you back to it. No filters, no soundtrack, no need to look special. It's easy to feel meaning on a retreat. The real challenge is finding value in a gray Sunday, in a tired Wednesday, in an ordinary day, the kind no one posts about. But that's where maturity lives. Because miracles don't always come with light. Sometimes they come with silence, with boredom, with the sudden desire to bake bread instead of save the world. That's not regression. That's grounding.
It's when you begin to understand that you don't need intensity to feel whole. You don't need to feel on purpose every day. You just need not to abandon yourself on the days when it's quiet. Some people spend their whole lives chasing purpose and miss the now. They miss the hot meal. They miss the simple conversation. They miss the peace of an uneventful day. But maybe that uneventful day is exactly what you needed most, because only those who stop chasing meaning all the time can finally see the meaning that was already there, in the clean floor, the cooked meal, the breathing body. That's where real spirituality begins, when you no longer need euphoria to believe you're on the right path. You just wake up, do what needs to be done, care for what you love, and end the day knowing that, even without magic, you stayed true to yourself. And what if that's it? What if that's all it is? Sometimes, life doesn't ask you to shine. It asks you to stay. And staying, on the ordinary days, is one of the bravest things you'll ever do. You don't need to isolate yourself, but you also don't need to explain yourself.
After some time walking the path of truth, something curious happens. You start to enjoy the silence, the absence of questions, the space between you and others. Not because you hate the world, but honestly, you're tired of explaining, tired of having to justify why you're quieter now, tired of explaining why you leave earlier, tired of saying it's not personal, it's just necessary. You feel you've changed, and every time you try to say it out loud, it comes out wrong. Words don't reach it. The feeling doesn't fit into a sentence. And you begin to wonder, for what? For whom am I trying to translate what I live inside? That's when the urge comes to disappear, to retreat into a safer world, to speak only with those who understand you without words. And it's okay to want time alone, but be careful not to confuse solitude with protection, because what begins as self-care can quietly become armor. But you don't need to protect yourself from everyone. You just need to choose more wisely who gets access to you. You don't have to isolate, but you also don't have to translate yourself for everyone. Some people simply won't understand. And that's not a tragedy. It doesn't make you arrogant. It doesn't make them ignorant. It simply means you're in a different place on the path now. And it's okay not to walk with everyone anymore. Carl Jung once said that the true path of the self requires a certain degree of separation, not as rejection, but as realignment. But what almost no one tells you is that you can create space without turning into stone. You can speak less without disappearing. You can stop explaining without shutting down. It's possible to remain whole without going into defense mode. And if there's one thing time teaches, it's that the right silence is worth more than 1,000 unnecessary explanations. Emotional maturity begins when you stop fighting to be understood and start choosing where it's worth being fully honest. Not everyone has to understand you. Not everyone will know what you feel. And that doesn't make you smaller. It makes you free. Because as long as you keep trying to prove your worth to everyone, you'll keep needing their approval to validate what is already yours. And you don't need that. You just need to listen to your body. Your body knows. When the conversation feels forced, your chest tightens. When the space is false, your breath shortens. When someone crosses a line, your jaw clenches. It's not drama, it's data. The body's language is more honest than words. And sometimes, the wisest decision you can make is to stop trying again. Stop trying to force a bond that's already ended. Stop trying to explain a boundary that should be obvious. Stop trying to defend a no that came from care and not from anger. Because once you begin treating yourself with truth, you accept that you won't fit everywhere. And a new kind of freedom is born. The freedom to be present without performing, to be whole without having to prove it, to be silent and still fully here. You don't need to disappear to feel safe, but you also don't need to bend to be accepted. You can stay. You can breathe. You can say nothing.
And sometimes that says everything. Forgetting is subtle. One day you look up and you've gone silent again. You thought you were past that. You thought the old you, the one who stayed quiet to keep the peace, who said yes just to avoid disappointing, who smiled when they didn't want to, was long gone. But then one day, you catch yourself right back there, saying what the other wants to hear, avoiding a confrontation that needed to happen, swallowing words that hurt even in thought. And you realize, I became who I used to be again. But it's not that simple. You didn't go back, you slipped, and that's different. Old patterns don't vanish, they wait, quietly, in the corner, knowing that one day you'll be tired enough to let them return. And when they come back, they return like comfort. Because as much as they suffocate you, they're familiar. They're what your body knows. They're what the world used to reward. Daniel Kahneman, Nobel Prize winner in behavioral science, explains, the brain is programmed to repeat what it already knows, even when it hurts. It's called cognitive ease. It takes less energy to return to what's predictable than to sustain something new. And the new is exhausting. It demands attention, awareness, choice. That's why sometimes you fall back, even without meaning to, even after all you've learned. You notice it when, in the middle of a conversation, you choose comfortable silence instead of difficult truth. Or when you agree to something you don't want, just to avoid upsetting someone. Or when you over-explain yourself, just like you used to. And the pain isn't just about what you did. It's about what you thought you were already done with. I thought I was stronger. I thought I had learned. I thought I had changed. And that turns into shame, into self-judgment, into the urge to give up. What's the point of all this if I always end up back in the same place? But you didn't go back to the same place. You returned with more awareness. And that changes everything. Jung once said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life and you will call it fate. In other words, the old pattern doesn't disappear just because you've awakened. It disappears when you can recognize it and stop feeding it. And for that, you will mess up. You will forget. You will repeat. But you will also remember. You'll remember you can pause mid-sentence and choose a different direction. You'll remember you can ask for time before responding. You'll remember you can go back and realign if you've betrayed yourself. That is growth. Not glamorous, but real. It's repetition, it's effort, it's root.
This journey isn't a straight line. It's a spiral. And every time you circle back, you're not in the same place. You're more aware, more lucid, more awake. The point now is not to never fall. It's to fall and notice faster. To fall and treat yourself with kindness. To fall and not use that fall as proof that you never changed.
You have changed. But real change isn't instant. It's a series of small, daily reminders. And one of those reminders is this. You may have gone quiet yesterday, but today you can speak. You may have betrayed yourself in one conversation, but in the next moment, you can choose yourself again. Because each day offers a chance to remember, to reorient, to come home. And little by little, the new stops being effort. It becomes body, becomes habit, becomes root. Until one day, the old you tries to return, and you no longer recognize them. The hero who returns in silence. After everything you've been through, you come back. Back to the same house, same streets, same conversations. But something has changed. Not on the outside, but within. And the most curious thing is, you no longer feel the need to talk about it. Those who truly crossed over don't need to explain what happened, not because it's a secret, but because it would be useless. Words can't reach it. And truth now doesn't want a stage. It wants ground. Joseph Campbell said that every transformation is a hero's journey. But the true hero doesn't return as a master. They return as a bridge. They come back with no sword, no medal, no prepared speech. They return in silence, because now what they've discovered doesn't need to be spoken. It's in the eyes, in the gestures, in the rhythm. You've reached this place too, and you realize the deeper the experience, the less you feel like proving anything. You no longer need to say you're at peace. Peace breathes with you. You don't need to announce who you are. You've become it. And whoever wants to feel it will. And whoever doesn't matter. That's when transformation becomes root, not performance. Because even the ego can pretend to evolve, but it can't sustain silence. Carl Jung said that true individuation is not just a personal act, it's a gift to the community, but not as preaching, as presence. The one who's become whole doesn't arrive telling others what they should be. They arrive listening. They arrive seeing. They offer space for others to see themselves. And that changes everything. You're no longer in a hurry. You don't need to convince. You don't need to explain. What you've learned now lives in the way you breathe around others, in how you say no without anger, in how you care without losing yourself, how you listen without rushing to reply. This is the hero who returns. They no longer want to stage. They want fertile silence. They want real presence, the kind that makes no noise, but quietly transforms everything it touches. You don't need to teach anymore. You just need to live what you've become. And that alone is already a teaching. Maybe someone will see the way you live and feel inspired to try the same. Not because you said something poetic, but because you were consistent. And consistency is rare. You don't return enlightened. You return simpler, less obsessed with being right, more open to listening. You return to blend again with ordinary life, but now without losing yourself in it. And that is the hardest mission of all, to return to the world that once hurt you, with your heart still open.
No cynicism, no arrogance, no spiritual superiority. Only truth. And maybe in your return, no one will even notice. But inside, you'll know. You're doing what you came here to do. Not just to understand transformation, but to embody it. And what if that's it? What if your greatest offering now is simply to live differently, without needing anyone to notice? Because true transformation doesn't need an audience. It needs commitment. And you already know. Whoever truly returned didn't come back the same. That night, I understood everything. And it wasn't because someone explained it or because I found the right answer. It was because, for the first time, I stopped searching. I stopped defending myself, stopped trying to get somewhere. And I just stayed in front of the fire, listening to what had no name, feeling what didn't need to be understood. And there, everything made sense. Not as an idea, but as presence. I remembered awakening is not an event. It's a decision repeated every single day, even on the days without light. I remembered that pain returns, that exhaustion arrives, that the shadow shows up again. But so does the fire. Every time I return, the fire is still here. In the simplicity of breathing slowly, in the choice not to react, in the courage to continue, even with no certainty. That's when I saw it clearly. True transformation doesn't scream. It reveals itself in the way you do the small things after the chaos, in how you listen, in how gently you treat yourself, in the decision not to abandon yourself, even when everything around you feels like the past again. The world will try to pull you back. It'll offer you old pain, dressed in new clothes. It will make you doubt. And that's okay. You don't have to be strong all the time. You don't have to be certain all the time. You just have to remember the way back. And that path starts in listening, in silence, in the fire. No matter how far you stray, the fire always waits. Whenever you get tired, come back. Whenever you forget, come back. Whenever the world feels heavy, come back. Come back to that place inside you where no one demands anything, where nothing needs to make sense, where just existing is already enough. That place is not far. It's in your body, in your rhythm, in your breath. Carl Jung once said that every human being carries within them a spark that never goes out. You may get distracted, you may get lost, you may forget, but the spark remains, waiting, patiently. And when you sit, when you go quiet, it becomes a flame. That's it. You don't need big signs. You don't need new directions. You just need to remember. Remember who you've become. Remember what you've already survived.
Remember that even if it feels like everything restarted, you are no longer in the same place. You came back, but you came back different. Calmer, clearer, more yourself. And now you can rest. Not because everything is finished, but because you finally understood you don't have to run anymore. You are within. You are here. You are home. And that is enough. That night, I understood everything. And ever since, whenever the world gets heavy, I return to the fire. See you soon.